I was here beforehand doing my prep.
Oh, okay. All right.
Like I do for every show. This week on Dueling Review, we review Moonshine #1. Set during Prohibition deep in the backwoods of Appalachia, Moonshine #1 tells the story of Lou Pirlo, a city-slick torpedo sent from New York City to negotiate a deal with the best moonshiner in West Virginia, one Hiram Holt. What Lou doesn't figure is that Holt is just as cunning and ruthless as any NYC crime boss, because not only will Holt do anything to protect his illicit booze operation, he'll stop at nothing to protect a much darker family secret. A bloody, supernatural secret that must never see the light of day, or better still, the light of the full moon.
So what'd you think of the old Moonshine there?
The first thing I thought was, man, that's a lot of F-bombs.
Well, it is. It's Image Comics, right? And as we talk almost every week, how many titles coming out of Image Comics are the mature reader's title? And certainly Moonshine #1 from Brian Azzarello and Eduardo Risso, are totally in that mature ratings category.
Now, are they the team that was behind 100 Bullets?
I believe so. If I'm not mistaken. Brian Azzarello, yeah, this is the duo.
Because this reminded me visually, it's not even close to the same story. But as I was reading this, I was like, this feels like, this feels like a precursor to 100 Bullets, and I expected Agent Graves to show up.
I don't know if it's really a precursor. I mean, it's certainly the creative team, but this is really a different story in the backwoods of Virginia during Prohibition. Mm-hmm. There's a moonshiner up there in them thar hills.
Up in the hills, her name is Granny Clampett.
And he makes some good whiskey or gin or whatever that he's making in that still.
Moonshine. Sorghum.
And the big mob bosses in New York, or one of the big mob bosses in New York, wants it because if they can get it from Virginia to New York, they'll be sitting pretty and sitting rich. So this story focuses on one of the boss man's lackeys who has come down to Virginia to try to get out of some deal that he has with the boss man by striking a new deal with the moonshiners. Yeah.
And the moonshiner has an important message for him.
We're gonna we kill people that backstab us.
That's right. You don't want to get on our bad side like these revenuers.
Let me hear you squeal like a pig.
All that. See them dead revenuers?
Yeah.
So, honestly,
at the beginning
that's
of the
an incredible scene.
Oh yeah, it totally is. Beginning of the issue, not the episode.
Eposition.
The G-men are tramping through the woods looking for the still, and they're about to destroy it when they are attacked by something that rips them to shreds. And as you know, in your horror stories, those small little backwoods communities that like to keep them to themselves. Themselves for a reason.
They have secrets.
So, yeah, we don't find out what the secret is, although we know it's werewolves because it said so in the solicitations.
Right. Which is annoying.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, a man stumbles out of the woods naked. He's got blood all over his face and his body. The other option would be vampires, except it's daytime.
Sometimes vampires go out in the day.
I don't think so. That's kind of not a good idea.
Okay.
Because they kind of burn up and stuff.
Okay.
Unless they're a day walker, in which case they are hunted by the vampires. But I don't think that's the case here either.
Okay.
Of course, that's also a different company.
Right, and a different thing. And, vampires are made up, so the rules can be whatever you want.
No, vampires are real. I think we all know it. We stab them through the heart, wear them garlic necklaces.
Yeah, you know what else dies if you stab it in the heart?
Get the squirt gun full of holy water. Oh no.
Everything.
Oh no, you can't stab the doctor in the heart. Because he's got two hearts.
You could stab him in both hearts.
Well, that'd be a little bit harder.
A Time Lord vampire would be terrifying.
Time Lord vampire would probably be the worst thing ever in the history of the universe. Although you would think a Time Lord vampire, because he would have access to all of space and time.
Mm-hmm.
providing he's not converting them to other Time Lord vampires. Because if you got bit by a vampire Time Lord, would you be an immortal Time Lord or would you just be a vampire?
Think about this. If you stake him, does he just regenerate?
Oh, yeah, he probably would, see?
You'd have to stake him 12 times.
Or 13, depending on, your count. I wonder, because he would have access to all of space-time, if the body count would be relatively low because of the entire of space-time that he would have access to, right? So if you kill like 20 people in a week, that's a huge body count, right? But if you kill
think about it,
if you kill like 2 million people over the course of 1 billion years, that's like nothing.
But he's an immortal vampire who can travel, and if he travels back to yesterday, the things that have happened have always had happen.
Here's the thing. With a Time Lord vampire, because the doctor that we know is compassionate, he would go back to the same day and kill the same person again and again and again every time he needed to feed. Thus, he's saving everyone else because he's only killing that one person. And it bothers him so much that is the pain that he has to carry with him. And how about this? Let's say it's the year 2100, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Time Lord vampire kills an elderly person. And he keeps killing this elderly person again and again and again. And that's the pain that he must endure. But to complicate things, he runs into the younger version of the person that he's killing in the past. And that person becomes his companion. And thus he's even more tortured.
You know what's weird? Think about this. What if it's not the doctor? What if it's the master? And he goes back and kills everyone in history. But he keeps traveling back and killing everyone to the point where everyone is not only dead, they've always been dead. And there's no one left to kill. So he has to go further and further back in time till he goes back to the dawn of time and the first sentient being. And he kills it and causes a new big crunch, which causes the universe to explode. And then there's a new universe. And it's just like Flashpoint. Only different.
It'd probably be just like Secret Wars. That's the Secret
Flash.
War. That's the Secret War. The
war against the master.
Unit is also trying to track him down through the ages.
But the problem is Unit doesn't know if it's the 70s or the 80s, and thus they're lost. But that's how they survive, because nobody knows if they're in the 70s or the 80s. So that ambiguity keeps them alive because of temporal ability.
I much prefer. Now you could have two vampire Time Lords,
right?
One that is going around and killing maliciously that Unit is trying to hunt down, but they confuse it with the tortured Time Lord vampire that has this companion that he knows in 50 years he's going to kill again and again and again.
What if you woke up and not only are you a vampire, everybody's a vampire because a vampire time traveler has gone back and slowly bitten everybody?
Well, that's what I was saying. It depends. I mean, you can only go so far before you can only go so far before you ruin the premise, because if everyone's a vampire, then no one's special and your story's over.
Trent Reznor said the world is a vampire.
I think he was just saying that the world sucks.
Despite all his rage, he is still sick of Nicolas Cage.
I think, listen, seriously. I think we're all sick of Nicolas Cage.
I'm sick of Trent Reznor.
So here's what I like about this story. It is all set up, right?
Yes. This is first issue as prologue, basically.
Yeah, it is. And I think it does set up our characters, right? We've got this city slicker who doesn't know the way of the backwoods, thinks that he can bring his big city ways to the small town and get any of the women that he wants. And he's stumbled upon something that he won't be able to explain. And tie this back into Nicolas Cage, it's almost like the Wicker Man.
Yeah, it's got elements of that. It's got elements of that, person in a strange little town that you see in every third Stephen King movie and all the Hammer horror films. And that's great because that is such a weird premise to tie to this, John Dillinger kind of, see, we're all going to fight, see,
and
we're going to go on, we're going to.
And it takes place before, and I've said this a lot, it takes place before the first nuclear bomb, at which point technology ruins all magic and mystery. And so we're in a time period where you could have a family of werewolves just living up the street from you and never know it until someone stumbles upon it, and then suddenly all mayhem breaks loose.
The werewolves are nice people. You don't want to eat their hot pot, but they'll always come to the church social.
You don't want to eat their hot pockets either.
Yeah. And they'll be like, oh, we made cookies.
And don't ever borrow clothes from them because you'll always be brushing off hair. It's like, man, can someone please bring me a lint brush?
Their name is actually Lint Brush.
No, I think their name is, what is their name? It's
Hiram
Holt.
Hiram and Martha
Holt.
Lint Brush.
Yeah. Oh, what was I watching? Oh, what was I watching today? Someone wanted a safe word in some show. And my instinctive thing was to just say, Martha! Because someone's about to die.
So the safe word is differential equations.
I did like this. I did like this setup in this story. And I really dug the art because it uses a very limited color palette. It almost kind of feels, at least on the color side, a little bit like Francesco Francavilla because it limits the color palette and creates sharp contrast. But unlike Francavilla, it uses multiple colors where Francavilla tends to use a duotone coloring on all of his stuff. This one has some shading, but I like the mix of it's not quite orange or teal and orange or whatever. Yeah. But it's pretty close to that in this, and it feels oldie timey.
It reminded me of the Coen brothers palette in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, which takes place in a similar time frame, where you have that kind of sepia tone and gray, blue, green. Mm-hmm. But you have reds and you have, you don't have a full range of color, but it kind of, in the modern era, we think old photographs are old, and I think that this kind of ties into it. I don't know if you knew this, Stephen, but the world was in full color in the 30s.
No, it was not, because it didn't come color until Dorothy went over the rainbow, and that's when color was introduced. Everyone knows
that was 1939.
Exactly, right? And this is 29, so the world is still black and white, which you have to give Risso that much more credit for colorizing the past.
These are my mountains.
I love that when he goes to visit Hiram Holt, he goes and he sees this guy with a huge scar on his face standing on the porch, and he's like, "What do you want?" And the guy's trying to explain, "Hey, I want to talk to your boss." He goes, "Well, you need to explain it to me in detail, and then I'll go talk to him." And you kind of see in the explanation and in the reveal that our city slicker friend is just like, why am I explaining this to a dolt? This guy's an idiot, and I feel really like I'm wasting my time. And then the guy goes inside and comes back out a few minutes later, and he's like, "I'm Hiram Holt." And then the guy's like, "Oh, okay." So I kind of dig that little bit of a ruse going on, because it does, kind of fool the reader at the same time.
Yeah, it throws you, and the character work is very well done. And I think to some degree, when you're dealing with gangsters and, backwoods folk, there's going to be a level of stereotype. There's going to be a level of
you have to
of exaggeration, but it doesn't feel like it's way, way over the top. It doesn't feel like it's designed to mock either culture.
Mm-hmm.
Because in a lot of ways,
I don't think it's when you're going to use a stereotype or a trope. Maybe just trope would probably be more.
Yeah, trope is a good.
You can use a trope without making fun of it. Right? I mean, in this case, you've got this guy who thinks he's God's gifts to women, and the girl in the room is like giving him the stink eye. Turns out she's part of the Hiram or the Holt family. And so I think you can use that. And the hillbilly trope and the gangster trope, I think works. But then again, we don't have any hillbillies or gangsters that are going to argue or complain.
Yeah. And the ending leaves us in a very ambiguous, strange place, which I think could go good, could go bad.
Oh, no, I think this series is going to end with New York gangsters coming in and trying to, man versus nature this place, and it's going to end poorly for them.
Either that, or we're going to have New York gangster werewolves.
Oh, New York gangster werewolves. What will happen when the New York gangster werewolves meet the Time Lord vampires? Oh, man. It's going to be such the crossover.
It'll be Pretty Boy Floyd.
Yeah, so overall,
everything's looking up for George Nelson.
Providing it's a full moon.
Exactly.
Overall, I got a kick out of this comic. I mean, it's for me, and surprisingly, right now, especially this month, kicks off a whole bunch of crime noir titles from various publishers. Titan Publishing kicks off their hard crime comics. We've got a bunch coming out of Image Comics, and then there's another one that we just featured this week in our Major Spoiler Staff Picks. What is it called? I forget what it is. I picked it. Now I can't remember it because there's so many of them that are on that list.
There's a lot of new stuff.
There is always new stuff every week coming out from fine comic book publishers. Angel City from Oni Press. Hard-boiled 1930s noir starring Dolores Dare, previously Hollywood hopeful and current enforcer for the Volante mob. Ooh. So yeah, I mean I'm interested in that.
The Greg Berlanti mob.
It's interesting that we're suddenly, and maybe it's just one of those coincidence things, but when you have like BPRD, which kind of explores the horror, you see crime comics from Brian Azzarello and from Sean Phillips and what's his name who did The Fade Out. Ed Brubaker.
Ed Brubaker, yeah.
I think we're starting to enter this age of a new genre of horror crime comics that are being mashed together. Probably in line with stuff that we saw back in the 70s with some of the creepy and Tales from the Crypt and some of the stuff before that, even before the
crime stuff. You can go back to the 40s. Crime Does Not Pay from Pyro.
Mm-hmm.
You can get into that really deep stuff. A lot of that went away with the comics.
Right, that's what I was saying. So pre-code comics, I kind of feel like we could look at gross out comics like your favorite Crossed book, and we could say, well, that's pre-code type stuff. But what I'm talking about is this stuff that really is horror mixed with crime.
I don't even know that gross out stuff is what you'd expect from a pre-code comic, but
oh no, definitely it wouldn't be, but it's certainly saying, hey, look what we can do.
Right. Look what we can do when we have no limitations and no expectations, which I suppose that's a fine.
Is that okay to do? Is it okay to just say, hey, we have no limitations and therefore, I mean, Crossed kind of examines that, right? I mean, Crossed is like, what happens when you take away everyone's inhibitions and you take away any kind of moral authority from them? This is what happens. This extreme chaos happens. Does that suddenly make the book seem more meta than it should be?
The artistic, I really feel like it's the artistic intent with it. Crossed has an intent, or at least at one point had an intent that felt like we're trying to make a statement. We're trying to say something about the nature of humanity or the brutality of us and how we suck and the monster is us, y'all. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think that there's a level of comfort as a reader where you can look at something and say, I really want to read more about the exploration of brutality and inhumanity and these terrible things. I just don't want to read that book.
No, I understand that. But what I'm saying is, when you take away limitations and what they've done in that book, aren't they demonstrating why there maybe needs to be some maybe internal oversight?
From some perspectives, yes. I mean, there are people, for me, Romero zombies are scarier than run-in zombies.
Right.
But Romero zombies exist because of the limitations of filmmaking on a shoestring budget in 1967.
Right.
If you look at, the 28 Days Later or the I Am Legend with those hordes of zombies, or God help us, World War Z on film, those hordes of zombies, to some people, are the scariest thing ever. And they're much scarier than a Romero zombie. So it really is a matter of, I think, perspective. It's a matter of what you're going to say with them.
Yeah.
So I agree with you that sometimes the restraint, the limitations of a medium, the limitations of a comics code, the limitations of we can only shoot 8 minutes worth of film on our Super 8 camera, all of that can lead to not even necessarily better, but different maybe in some ways quantitatively more interesting material.
Well, I think the
But
challenge, I think it's working around that challenge and finding that creative, you know, it's like a kid that has wants for nothing, right? Where he's spoiled and just gets everything he wants. He doesn't understand any kind of limitation. Whereas if a child is grown up and it's like, hey, this is something we can afford, this is something we can't afford, this is something that's appropriate for you or not appropriate for you. When they grow up into that understanding, I don't want to say more well-rounded or whatever, but you know, it goes back to this idea of you have this understanding of what can you go up against the wall before you've stepped over that limitation or stepped over that boundary.
There's an old saying that I like to remember, and it goes like this: you can never be too rich or too thin, and if you don't believe that, you've never truly been poor or fat. And in a lot of ways, that's true. I think that, for instance, if you look at something like House of a Thousand Corpses, that movie is scary as hell, and it's disturbing, and I don't ever want to watch it again. But it's partly disturbing because they intentionally said, we're not going to have any limits. We're never going to have any limits. Right. We're going to put every single terrible urge viscerally in the middle of the screen and show this as you know, brutally as possible. And that is a valid perspective. Whereas if you look at a film like, I don't know, what's a good subtle slasher movie?
Well, you know, I think when you look at you know, some of Hitchcock's stuff, right? You know, especially when you look at
Psycho
or Vertigo, or not Vertigo, well, Vertigo kind of, but Rear Window.
Vertigo in a different way. Rear Window definitely.
Yeah, but yes, you can even look at something like Halloween, where you know
the original Halloween, the Carpenter version.
Yeah. You can get away with some horror there that is not just massive amounts of body parts flying all over the place. You save that for your final glory shot or gory shot.
And part of the reason that you know, the shower murder sequence from Psycho, first of all, doesn't show murder.
Right.
It doesn't show a naked woman. It doesn't show a stabbing. It doesn't show anything. But part of the reason that people remember it, and part of the reason that it is so enduring, is because it doesn't show you a stabbing. It implies a stabbing, and your brain fills in those blanks.
Right. It's like currently that Hurricane Matthew. You know, everyone's talking today about the skull. That was
the skull. Looks like Killface from Frisky Dingo.
Yeah, and my son was talking about that. I was like, well, you realize that it's not the devil. It's not Obama. It's not, you know, nobody is causing this skull to appear. It's all in your head. And
it's the human mind making patterns out of anything.
And we've talked about this before, that at least for me, when your mind has to come up with the grossness and the scary part, it becomes even worse. And we've talked before about the scene in Reservoir Dogs where the guy's getting ready to saw off the guy's ear, and instead of the camera staying on it and you're seeing the ear getting chopped off and blood shooting out and all that stuff, the camera, as he grabs the ear and gets ready to put that straight razor out of it, it pans away and you just hear the guy screaming, and that is what gets you.
Right. Your horror is personal,
right,
and more horrible than anything that someone else will put on screen.
And that's how this issue starts out, right? I mean, the G-men go to the still, and suddenly we see something furry, and we see a gun with some blood splatter, and then we see an arm with some blood splatter, and then we see a guy on the ground with a shadow over him, and we cut to some spooky eyes, and then a wide shot of some birds flying off into the moon with the guy screaming, and that's terrifying just by itself.
Yep. And then later we see the aftermath, but we never see the revenuers get ripped apart, which, again, that is a specific decision, because clearly from the language, they could show anything they want. And I think that's
because
what
it's creator owned, they could do whatever they want too.
Right. That's what it kind of comes down to. These creators chose to do a gory discretion shot, not because they couldn't draw it on the page, not because they wouldn't draw it on the page, but because letting you fill in those blanks, you, the reader, the regal you, whatever you want to call it, fill in those blanks, makes it a personal horror, makes it something that's all in your imagination. And, you know, that's better in a lot of ways. And I can definitely see, and you can definitely make a case for this would have been a different book, but possibly no less successful if they had given us 5 pages of cross-style abominations and decapitation.
Monsters chewing off limbs and whatnot. Yeah.
It just would have been a different kind of material. And that's what it really comes down to, is what is the creator and the audience? What is the compact that they are entering into when reading this book? Is the horror is a little bit more subtle. The horror is a little more engrossing.
It feels like a period tale where you don't have to scare people with the details. You can scare them with the generalities.
Yes.
And that's why I really enjoyed this book. And I think if you kind of if a listener is listening to this and they're like, I don't know what these guys have been talking about, Time Lord vampires and Moonstillers and Johnny Depp and all this stuff.
Time Lords. No one said Johnny Depp.
See, you ruined the joke, man.
Oh.
I really recommend.
Yes, Johnny Depp. That sure was a great joke.
I really miss Moonshine #1. I mean, not miss. I really recommend Moonshine #1.
I sure do miss it.
I sure do miss it. I wish I could read I wish I could read issue #2 right now. I enjoyed it a lot, and I don't know how long this is. I don't know if it's a 5 or 6 issue miniseries, or if I doubt it's an ongoing. But I got a kick out of it, so I'm giving it a thumbs up, and I'm recommending it.
I'll bet that this is an ongoing as long as it needs to be.
Yeah, maybe.
Because a lot of times
12 issues max.
I don't know. You could probably pull 25 out of this. I think that you could do a 2-year arc. I think you could do multiple arcs depending on what your actual hook is. I don't know yet whether the hook is hillbilly vampires or city slickers versus hillbilly vampires, or city slickers come and find something secret and arcane in the woods of Mississippi, Mississippi.
Maybe what they find out is everyone's a werewolf.
Yes, everyone's a werewolf because the doctor was bitten by a werewolf and went back in time.
Yeah. So are you recommending this or not recommending this?
I would recommend it. I would say that visually it's stunning.
Oh, yeah, really good.
The story still has a lot up in the air, and I feel like this is less well-rounded than I would like a first issue. I would have liked maybe another 10 pages to give us a little more meat, but yeah, it said meat because it's about werewolves. Yeah.
What if they were vegetarian werewolves, and the reason that guy's upset when he comes running out of the woods is because he's no longer a vegetarian werewolf.
Vegetarian-wolves.
Yeah, there you go. Out next week from Dark Horse Comics.
Vegan Thropes.
Vegan Thropes. Out next week from Dark Horse Comics, we have Vegan Thropes #1. Also, Yay! Call of Duty Black Ops 3 #6. It's a final issue in that miniseries. Let's see. Hellboy and Hell Trade Paperback Volume 2 comes out, as does Neil Gaiman's Troll Bridge hardcover, and Terminal City Library Edition hardcover, $49.99 there. Over at DC Comics, Action Comics 965, All-Star Batman #3, Batgirl and the Birds of Prey #3, Deathstroke #4. Oh boy, I bet we're going to see a lot more Deathstroke in the coming 2 years. Let's see. Flash #8, Lost Boys #1 comes out next week. Scooby Apocalypse #6, Superwoman #3. Oh, those are some of the titles coming out next week from DC Comics. Over at IDW Publishing, Back to the Future, Out of Time Dice Game. Well, that'll be different.
Gotta go back in time.
Duck Avenger #1.
Duck Avenger.
Oh, that's what I wanted to talk about on the Major Spoilers podcast.
What's that?
Did you know that Tad Stones, who we've interviewed on the Major Spoilers website multiple times, he's the creator of Darkwing Duck.
Yes.
He makes the claim that Darkwing Duck takes place in a different universe than DuckTales.
Yes.
I don't believe
an alternate universe. Well, the differences in Launchpad are marked, and as comic book fans, it would be pretty easy to write that off as the Earth 1 versus Earth 2 version of Launchpad.
Maybe, but they're too similar.
I don't know, man. If you actually listen to the character delivery in Darkwing Duck as opposed to DuckTales, it feels like Launchpad is considerably older and more experienced and has a slightly deeper voice and a more heroic aspect. And it feels like it's a different reality. And I can definitely see where the creator would want it to be different reality, even though there's a lot of crossover. I think Gizmo Duck crossed over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But Gizmo Duck came across the bridge from Duckburg. Did we ever see any of the other Duckburg characters?
It's been so long, I would have to go back and look.
I remember Neptuna.
Yeah, I would have to go back and look. It's been decades since I've been able to watch any of them.
Really, all I remember about Darkwing Duck is the first Fearsome 5 episode.
Mm-hmm.
And the episode where the Justice Ducks of America, I'm not a duck, I used to be, came together. Because I just love that running gag of, I'm not a duck, I used to be.
IDW Publishing.
One of the ducks was actually a dinosaur.
IDW Publishing also has October Faction Deadly Season #1 and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles ongoing number 63. Look for that on Rob's staff picks next week. Image Comics has Glitter Bomb #2. The Fade Out.
The Glitter Bomb.
Listen, I was talking about Ed Brubaker's The Fade Out. Definitely go check out the Fade Out Deluxe Edition hardcover out next week, $50. The book, the story itself is totally worth it. Plus, there's a lot of bonus content, and I don't know what they're putting in the deluxe edition. But man, what a very good noir Hollywood tale coming out of the late 40s, early 50s, or mid 50s, whatever it is really good. People, go check that out. Killer Be Killed #3 arrives, as does Savage Dragon Archives trade paperback Volume 7. Mature readers, Matthew.
They always are.
Sex #32, Shudder #23, and Tokyo Ghost trade paperback Volume 2. Over at Marvel Comics, Darth Vader #25, I believe that is the last issue in that run. Clone Conspiracy #1. Oh, that's the Spider-Man tale. I'm all going to get all into that. Yeah. Howard the Duck #11, Old Man Logan #12, Mosaic #1, and X-Men Gambit and Rogue. X-Men Gambit and Rogue trade paperback, $24.99. In the rest category, we have Belladonna #1, Black Eyed Kids #7. Let's see. Dark Souls, Legend of the Flame #2 of 2. Death Force #5.
Deathstrike Blood Force.
Jungle Fantasy Ivory #3 arrives. We have, you want to guess how many variant covers we have on this one?
10.
You are correct. 10 exactly. We have the regular cover, the luscious cover, the luscious nude cover, the natural beauty cover, the natural beauty nude cover, the nude cover just by itself.
Right. It's not natural.
The sultry cover, the sultry nude cover, the rap cover, and the rap nude cover. Wow.
The shower cover, the nude shower cover, the nude shower nude cover nude.
Rivers of London Black Mold MOULD #1 of 5.
Rivers of London.
Warhammer 40K Will of Iron #1. And Wrath of the Eternal Warrior #12. Those are just some of the books coming out next week. Of course, you can find the complete list over at majorspoilers.com just a day or two before the comic shop has them. And you can find out what you're going to get when you head to your LCS. Next week on Dueling Review,
Lost Boys #1. Santa Carla, California is on the edge, probably all the damn vampires. The eccentric coastal town and haven for undead was finally returning to normal after its last supernatural scuffle left the local coven's head vampire dead and gave newcomers Michael and Sam Emerson a housewarming both violent and bizarre. Now the brothers must once again team up with militant vampire hunters Edgar and Alan Frog when a new gang of ruthless, stunning, life-sucking night crawlers known as the Blood Bells emerges from the aftermath to collect Michael's love interest and their lost sister, Star.
You can show your support for this show and everything we do at Major Spoilers by becoming a Patreon member at patreon.com/Major Spoilers. Contribution allows us to keep this show going, pay for our growing costs, and gives us motivation to do more stuff for you. Plus, you get access to a bunch of other bonus stuff. You can find out more at patreon.com/Major Spoilers. Thank you so much for checking out Dueling Review, and we will talk with you next time when you'll hear Matthew say,
"We are never going back to Arizona."
This podcast is copyright 2016 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.